Tower. And no, I have not been up there since they put the glass bubbles out there. Has anybody seen the pictures of what they've done? They've made extensions, and you look straight down, can't get me out there, I'm not going to do it. But we'll spend the time there at the Willis Tower, then dinner at Gino's Pizzeria, and then our performance at Briar Street Theater of Blue Man. And I just talked to our group salesperson the other day. I talked to Kristen at Blue Man Group, and they've actually put some new things in the show. So she said, Johnny, it's going to be exciting. So you're going to be one of the first groups to see some of the new things that added to Blue Man Group. Breakfast next morning, the Shed of Cram, and then over to the Field Museum of Natural History. Of course, that afternoon, the concert band will be giving the concert there in the Grand Hall of the Field Museum of Natural History. Lunch that day, they got a great deli right off the Grand Hall. It costs you about $7 or $8, but guess what they have in the basement? McDonald's. They're everywhere. So again, probably about $7 or $8 for that meal that evening. And then some time in our small groups to do some shopping along Michigan Avenue, then dinner that night, and visiting the attractions at Navy Pier. That evening, we should be back to the hotel right around 9:15-ish. Parents could be just a tad bit later, because even on Friday night at 8:30, traffic is still backed up in Chicago going out to the burbs. Now, the next morning, a very, very important morning, bright and early breakfast that morning. We're going to leave the hotel around 7 and head into downtown Chicago to Symphony Hall. The band warms up that afternoon, that morning I should say, from 9:15 to 9:30. Then we have our honors performance. Then we have our clinic. And then from there, we will actually see one of the other groups, the orchestra there from Klein Forest High School. And then lunch that day, I believe we're going to go down to Water Tower Place and use the food court there. It's a really unique food court, but figure about $8 to $10 for that meal. Somebody can help me keep adding those up. And then that night, after we visit the Chicago Art Institute, we have our dinner dance there along Lake Michigan. And that's one of the coolest dinner dances we will do. My two favorite are the dinner dance cruise in Chicago as well as New York. Because you're right there just cruising on the coastline, seeing the skyline of Chicago. So that's going to be a fun evening that night, and a great way to wind up our tour in Chicago. Next morning, good things start to come to a close. We have breakfast. We leave on into Indianapolis. Figure about $7 or $8 for that particular meal. Then dinner is going to be included in Nashville that evening. That's where we'll do our driver's exchange. And we're back in Saudi, 10:15 Eastern Daylight Time that night on March the 20th. And the good news, Mr. Majors, I believe you told me spring break starts the next morning. Awesome. Except for parents, of course, you know, back to work, back to the grind thing. All right, somebody help me real quick, add up what we think we need in the way of meal money. All right, round 42. So why don't we say how much? All right, so let's say, you know, for maybe some soft drinks on the way up or on the way back, or snacks at the hotel, or water while we're on the trip, I would say maybe let's take that to about $65, okay, for meals. I feel very, very comfortable with that, about $65. And you know what works great? If you start the tour off with some change. And the reason being is, you know, we go to the rest stops, you know, and everybody goes right to the vending machines, and the little dollar thing doesn't want to work. You just spit those dollars out. So start off with some change. Now, in addition to meal money, I'm already going to beat you on the number one question I get at every final documents meeting, and that's, Mr. Thomas, how much spending money? Well, having traveled with teenagers since 1978, I can promise you one thing. The more you give them, the more they spend. Young adults, you guys have worked hard to make this trip become a reality. Probably doing a lot of fundraising to offset the cost. Your moms and dads have made a lot of financial sacrifices for this trip to become a reality. So do me one favor. When you get to Chicago, please don't buy every plastic replica of the Willis Tower that you find, because what happens is 3 years from now, we can't give them away here in the yard sales in Saudi Daisy. Purchase maybe one or two really cool things that mean something of your trip. Like for me, it might be that really cool t-shirt or sweatshirt from Blue Man Group. Or if we have time, Mr. Majors, and if it is open, which I'm not real sure, the symphony shops, you know, right there next to the hall. You might want to buy something really cool there. But again, purchase one or two items that really mean something of your trip. Now, if you're going to do traveler's checks and or debit cards, because a lot of young adults now travel with the debit cards, which is about every place takes them, do me a favor, start off with enough money for at least day 1 and half of day 2. You can do that, day 1 and half of day 2 for those of you that are bringing either travel checks and or debit cards. And I always highly suggest that if you are bringing cash, do it in small denominations. I think that seems to work a lot better when you are traveling. Packing, clothing, spending money, how to reach us 24/7. Mr. Majors, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about prescription medicine as well as the attire for each day, and then parents will open up the floor to any questions or concerns that you may have.
Okay. For prescription medicine, those of you guys that went to California with us last year, we're going to do that essentially the same way that we did it. The students will turn their prescription medicines in. Their chaperone will keep it with them, and this will be responsible for administering that, not administering, but making sure that the student has the medicine on at all times. Now, the exception of that, anyone that has like a prescription for a rescue inhaler, EpiPen, allergies type issues, they can have those on them and actually must have those on them at all times. So if your child normally travels, peanut allergy, something like that, they've got a rescue inhaler, EpiPen, their chaperone will not be responsible for that. The child will have to have that with them at all times. But other prescription medicines will be turned into the chaperone. The chaperone will be responsible for it for the trip. And the reason for that being, basically, we had a chaperone meeting about a week ago, and I'm not concerned behaviorally about anybody that's on this trip. I'm really not. What I'm concerned about in that case is that with the best of intentions, somebody says, boy, I really got a headache. Well, I got this. And they give them something that they shouldn't have, can't have, whatever. So just to avoid that, prescription medicines will be in the possession of the chaperone, except for EpiPen rescue inhalers. What to wear. Let's just look at the itinerary and we'll talk through what to wear. Wednesday, the students will start out at school. They're not excused from first and second block. Okay? So Wednesday morning, they come to school, they go to first block, second block as they normally would, and the students will at that point eat first lunch. I know our symphonic band folks normally eat last lunch, but I'll talk to the administration and make nice. They're going to have to eat first lunch so that we can eat here before we go. At some point at the end of first lunch, there will be an announcement for band students to come down to the band room. And that will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 11:15 or what, I actually don't know what time first lunch is. Any ninth graders here have first lunch? What time does that end, do you know?
11:07.
What's that?
11:07.
11:07. That's a perfect time for the students to come down to the band room because that's about what time we expect the coaches to get here, around 11:15. We'll load the bags underneath the coaches. The equipment should already be loaded. Now let's stop on bags for a second. You'll need some kind of small bag for symphonic band folks for the orchestra hall performance day, concert band folks for the field museum day, because on whatever your performance day is, you're going to be changing in and out of your performance attire. So it doesn't need to be a big bag. The tuxes and the dresses, we're going to clear out a couple of our uniform cards. They'll be on there. Okay, so you don't have to worry about packing your tux and dress. We'll have those in the cart for you, and we can let you have them the day of whatever your performance is. But you need a small carry-on bag for that day because you do have to get in and out of your performance gear. Wednesday, you're at school anyway, so whatever that you're wearing on Wednesday has to be dress code appropriate. All of our clothing has to be dress code appropriate. Wednesday, they're already dressed. On Thursday, that can be casual all day. Remember, they're going to have the jackets. Those are going to be ready. Actually, most of them, I think, are ready now. We're waiting on a couple of the odd sizes. But they will have the jacket. So they'll have their jacket, and it needs to be comfortable and casual that day. And again, within dress code boundaries. Friday for symphonic band kids, 10, 11, 12 graders, and color guard folks, that again is appropriate and casual all day. For the concert band students, the 9th graders, that's where you'll need to change before and after your field museum performance. You'll change in and out of the tux/dress and then back out after we're done. So you'll need your carry-on bag there. And that one, Friday, is casual. Saturday is not quite as casual. Let's look at Saturday for a second. For the folks that are going to be 9th graders and chaperones that are going to be mostly observing the symphonic band performance in Orchestra Hall, because of where you're going to be, and this is a world-class facility, and I'm not sure how the other groups will have their people dressed, but here's how we're going to dress, and you guys always do this well.